Hello again, everyone. Still Jardy. I am now going to look over the planning sheet examples we talked about earlier today, just so you guys have it for a record. And if you were an embedded tutor, you missed this section, so I wanted to make sure that you had it. All right. So I want to stress that we are working on a bank of planning sheet examples for SIs to look back on, for us to maybe submit in the future for accreditation, so on and so forth. The implementation of the planning sheet you guys see today is actually a fairly new one, so we don't have a lot to work with. However, Arlette, Jacqueline, and myself are crafting and adding to this bank when we can. But our goal is to kind of have it for typical courses that you'll see an SI in, and that new SIs can look at, or even returners can look at for inspiration. I want to note that this semester we do have some courses that we haven't had SIs for before, so it's a blank slate. However, as I kind of said earlier, the basis is still the same. You kind of are in maybe conceptual courses or application courses. And by that, I mean, so for instance, ISI for psychology, developmental psychology. Psychology is a lot of concepts. It's a lot of understanding theories, a lot of understanding theorists, and definitions, so on and so forth. I would say something like maybe math or chemistry, CIS. That's going to be your application to where students actually are going to be working out problems themselves. They're going to be working with formulas, or they're going to be working with code, so on and so forth. So we do have some examples in the psychology folder as well as the math folder. Again, this should be uploaded to our Google Classroom. Hopefully sometime over the weekend, so you guys have access to it. Again, not all the folders are filled in. That will be a project we are working on throughout the semester. So, please be patient. But for conceptual stuff, you can refer to psychology examples, and for application, you can refer to math examples, at least for now. And the hope is that one day we can utilize the plans you guys creating and input it into the bank so that future SIs can utilize it. Okay, so just to start, let's go to maybe, let's see, yes, this one. So this SI filled out a planning sheet, and I took out the leader name, kind of the date and the faculty, just so it can be a template. And this is for Psych 1 or General Psychology. The planning sheets are the same, whether you're doing biology, math, psychology, because again, we're utilizing that template that we have on Google Classroom and just making a copy of that and filling in our own information on that copy. Or if you want, you can print it out and fill in by hand. It's your prerogative. Typing is just easier for me as an online SI. So again, you will have the name of your SI leader, the date of the session that this plan is for, the faculty you are working with, and then the course. So again, this was general psychology, so it says Sci 1. Your session will function as an opener icebreaker. You have a main activity section. The main activity section has room for 3 activities, or you can maybe do 1 or 2, but the form has space for 3. And then your closer. So icebreakers are typically going to be like 3 to 5 minutes, or if you're having longer sessions, they can be like 5 to 10 minutes. It depends on how long your session is. Then you have your objective or content. For this, we said that it was an icebreaker because that's what it is. You have your CLTs, your collaborative learning technique. Make sure you're adding that. So when we're looking at your planning sheet for maybe observations or kind of just making sure you guys are comfortable with the documentation, we want to make sure that you're filling in all the really pertinent aspects of your planning sheet. So the CLTs, learning strategies, links, and details are really key here. And you'll see kind of why going forward. So to start with this icebreaker, the CLT is a group discussion. Remember that our CLTs are the way students are interacting with one another. So this can be group discussion, it can be clusters, it can be think, pair, shares, turn to a partner, individual presentation, peer lessons. However they're interacting with one another, that's going to be your CLTs. Your learning strategies are going to be, how are they interacting with the material? Is this to summarize the lecture? Are they trying to identify the big idea? Are they reviewing their notes? Are they doing verbal volleyball? Are they playing Jeopardy? Are they doing memory? Are they utilizing visuals, board work? However they're interacting with the material, what activities they're doing to better learn the material or interact with it, that's going to be your learning strategy. That will go there. So again, your CLT, that's going to be how are they interacting with one another? Is it a huge group, clusters, one-on-one, think, pair, share, that kind of thing? Learning strategies is how are they interacting with the material? Is it to identify the big idea? Is it to review notes, predict future test questions, reflect on how they feel after a test? How are they interacting with the material? You have the duration. So how long is your icebreaker going to last? For this particular session, it was 10 minutes. And then you have the lecture, textbook, or slide references. So for a lecture, I'd say, oh, it was lecture 3, the nervous system and the brain, or textbook chapter 3, whatever is pertinent, whatever you're kind of pulling from, you want to make sure you're referring to that. For myself and for any SI who is doing online sessions, you typically will utilize slides. So whether that be your faculty slides, if you're pulling just from their slides and then making your activities, reference that. Or if you create your own slideshow, reference that as well. We then have a space here for links. And this is links to any material you utilize for this section of your plan. So for the icebreaker, was this mentioned in your own personal SI PowerPoint? Did you pull from a worksheet from like a different college, like UMKC? Link it here. That's going to be your link to materials. Then detailed activity. The detailed activity won't be too detailed in your icebreaker unless it's an involved icebreaker. But we want to know what were they doing. So don't just say, I'll have students open the session for 5 minutes. That's not detailed enough. It will be something like this. I will ask students to take 3 minutes to go over the boundary slide. They will then spend the remaining 7 minutes introducing themselves and sharing one point from the previous lecture that they feel is important to know. That's something that's good. We know what you were gunning for there. All right, then we go into our main activity section. Again, your main activity is typically, if you're doing an hour-long session, it'll be around 45 minutes. So for that, it's typically in your plan sheet, you'll have room for 3. So you can see right here, objective or content 1, objective or content 2, or objective or content 3. So we have room here for 3 sections. You may not always fill in all 3, and that's the case. I would personally just delete that out. So what you can do is just right click and you can have delete row, and that'll get rid of it. So just delete all the rows that you're not utilizing. But you'll notice that they all function the same. It's just a little bit broken down more, so it's a little bit simpler to follow. Main activity will typically be around 45 minutes. For this person who's having a longer session, it took about 70 to 75 minutes. The first activity they utilized was covering the nervous system. That was the objective or the content, nervous system. The CLT, how are students interacting? They were interacting in clusters, so small groups. What was the learning strategy? Well, to interact with the material, they were doing note review and they were identifying the big idea. How long did this first activity last? Around 45 minutes. And then you will reference the lecture, textbook, or slide and link to your material. And then you'll have the detailed breakdown. So students will will be spread between 3 groups and given 30 minutes to review the slides and provide, and they come up with aspects and examples for the following as listed. Students will come back into a large group and will be asked to share what they think the forebrain, hindbrain, and midbrain control for the remaining 15 minutes. So it tells us what they're doing for that time zone, the kind of definitions that they're aiming to discuss, so on and so forth. That's what we mean when we say detailed. So don't just say, oh, students will be reviewing the nervous system for 30 minutes and then 15 minutes we'll talk about the brain. We want it to be a little bit more in depth than that. And then also too, that helps kind of how to steer the session because you will get off topic sometimes. Students will have follow-ups or other questions, and that's okay. But to kind of have a plan you can refer back to get back on track is always great. All right, objective or content 2. Now we're looking at the brain. CLT, we have individual presentation. So students are going to be learning from a person, and the learning strategy is peer lessons. So a peer is teaching them. How long did this activity take? 15 minutes. If there was material, you would insert that here. If there isn't, then you can leave that blank. Then I will take 3 minutes to assign students a part of the brain to focus on. They will then be given 5 minutes, think about 2 key things to share and highlight. And the remaining time will be spent having students share their key points with the large group. So again, that breakdown. And then the final activity is now a neuron diagram. So CLT, how are they interacting with their peers, turning to a partner. Learning strategy here is visuals because we're utilizing a diagram. Took 10 minutes and linked to the material. So the diagram or the slide that she pulled the diagram from, so on and so forth. Then again, detailed. And then you have your closing activity, which is just your closer. So 3 to 5 minutes. This one took 5 minutes. It was a chapter overview. It was a group discussion, and it was a Q&A kind of learning strategy. So it was question answers, how they're interacting with the material, insert pertinent links, so on and so forth. This is the part of your plan that should be filled in prior to your session. If you are an embedded tutor, then same thing if you're doing like an exam prep. I'll show you an exam planning sheet right after this. But for SIs, this is what you need to have filled in. After your session has ended, you will go to the reflection/flex plan portion. That is where you reflect on your session. So did it go well? What was attendance like? Did you find that clusters don't work very well or group discussions don't work well because the group is too large? You reflect on what you want to do in the future. Maybe you kind of say, oh, next time I'll make sure to advertise my session at the end of sessions in the future. So that's time you reflect on. This is important. I speak from experience. It's kind of easy to kind of miss because you're so focused on filling in the bulk of your plan and the session ends and then you go do whatever you have to do. Do make sure you find the time to come back and fill in your reflection so that you can grow as an SI leader. So that is what your basic planning sheets look like. That's how you fill it in. Again, we want you to be as detailed as you can. In fact, let me go to, yes. All right, so this is a different example of a planning sheet. And we can see this is for Sci 48 or statistics and behavioral sciences. And this is a different kind of organizational style. It's still filling in the CLTs and learning strategies, giving you the durations, giving you pertinent links. But the detail is broken out differently. So they're going to be defining for 2 minutes. Then they have to think aloud. Then they'll be doing a group discussion. And it tells you what they're going to be focusing on in these sections. So that's a different strategy of doing it. So if you are someone who likes it to be a little bit more succinct, that's okay. If you have the time, that is great. It's whatever works for you and your style. The first plan I showed you, that's more my style. But some people like it where it's more organized, and I can respect that. My brain, I get distracted. So whatever works for you, that is fine. But that's your planning sheet. That's what that's going to look like. Okay, I did want to show an exam. So for our embedded tutors, excuse me really quickly, I'm just going to shift a bit. All right, so for our embedded tutors, you'll probably be planning when it comes to exam reviews. So this is an example of an exam review one. So again, still filled in the same icebreaker, group discussion, learning strategy if there is one. So for this icebreaker, I didn't have a learning strategy because they weren't interacting with material. They were just telling me how they've been studying, how they're feeling about the upcoming exam, so on and so forth. So kind of like I said, for this, you'll note that this planning sheet got, what's the word I want to use? Shorter. So in the first ones I showed you, it had those 3 sections. Because this was a Jeopardy review, the main activity has been shortened to 1 objective or content. So exam 3, that is a group discussion. They're identifying the big idea and summarizing the lecture. They're referencing chapters 11 through 15. Took about 50 minutes, and then a link to that. And detailed. So it may not be as detailed as maybe like for this time, they'll break into groups because it is a Jeopardy session. That's okay. But let them know they're playing Jeopardy. Topics will range. Each chapter will have 5 questions with increasing difficulty levels. Students will be asked to volunteer, but if no one volunteers, students will be chosen to answer questions or do popcorn question answering. Then you have a closer and kind of detail that again. If you're asking them specific questions, I would include that. Just to kind of give further detail. And then you can reflect at the end. So that is kind of what a planning may look like for an embedded tutor for exam review or for an SI leader. It It depends. If you are someone who likes to do a variety of activities for your review sessions, that's okay too. It'll look the same. If you're someone who just wants to do Jeopardies or Kahoots, then you can get rid of those kind of unnecessary boxes by again doing the right click method and deleting that row. Alrighty, so really quickly, I did want to show an example of a math planning sheet. So excuse me while I open that. All right, so again, like I said, we're still working on it, so please be patient with me. Sorry, my laptop is a little slow. So let me just close some things. Okay, all right, I think we're back. All right, sorry about that. So like I said, psychology could be considered more conceptual, math will be more application. So for this one, I think yeah. So for math one, again, your plan sheets are the same no matter your subject, but the activities you choose to use may be different. So that can be seen here. Actually, let me go to the second example. So again, this was for Mat 12, group discussion, the icebreaker, took 5 minutes. Just ask students this question, and that's great. Then you have the main activity. So we have the turn to a partner. Learning strategy wasn't listed, but I would say it would be like a Q&A type style. And you can see the detail here is that you detail, oh, turn to a partner, I have 2 questions prepared. Students will discuss the problem and work on the answer. They have 10 minutes to work on both problems, and the remaining 5 minutes, they'll discuss their answers. And it provides the problems that they gave their students and shows the right answers. So this is kind of example of that. Additionally, we can see something that we haven't seen in the conceptual ones, which is board work, which you may be utilizing if you are a conceptual type course. And again, you have the pertinent link, and students will do, board work. So again, it says that students will work in groups or individually, depending on the size of that study group, both problems, and demonstrate their work on the whiteboard. So if you are a virtual, you still have the whiteboard function in Zoom. In person, great, use real whiteboards. After 25 minutes, they'll present their work, and these are the problems they had to solve. So this is detailed. This lets us know, okay, they're either going to be in groups or by themselves, depending on size. These are the problems they had to do. This is what that time spent looks like. So again, you should have access to these planning sheets soon, hoping over the weekends you can refer back to. Again, psychology and math are the ones that I have examples for to utilize. I'm still trying to input and kind of flesh out ones for maybe bio classes and CIS classes. So be patient. I should be working on that sometime next week, but to get you started, psychology and math are great to look at, and you can pull from either. Something that was mentioned earlier is that, well, how do I know which activity to utilize? And that's the thing, is that you kind of have to get into the swing of it. You do what you find interesting, what you think will work. And if it doesn't work out, you can make a note of that in your reflection/flex plan portion and try something else the next time. As you go along the semester, you'll figure out which activities you like to utilize, which activities work well for certain topics, and certain things work for certain groups. So that's the base of your planning sheets. Again, as always, if you have any questions, reach out to Arlette, Jacqueline, or myself, or Rezu. Remember, your planning sheet should be linked to your Google timesheet. To make sure you do that. If you have questions about how to link it, you haven't linked it yet, you don't know how, again, do reach out and we will take care of that and help you with that. Alrighty, guys, that is it for me. Again, I always stress this because it's important. Don't be afraid to ask any questions. We're here to help and be as helpful as we can be. With that, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys soon.